Stanley Kubrick, despite their enormous intelligence and erudition, would have consciously realized that they were reduplicating the Ptolemaic myth. But it's interesting that right at the moment that, we were going to the moon, the film came out in 1968, we landed on the moon in 1969, right at the moment that we were empirically validating this, sort of Newtonian cosmology, or rather, we could say the Copernican vision that everything revolves around the sun. Right at that moment, Kubrick and Clarke are creating a modern myth of the solar system that involves a retrieval and miniaturization of the very myth that was done away with, the whole Ptolemaic myth of everything, all these planetary spheres with the Earth at the center. So I'm fascinated by that cultural process. Something's going on there in the cultural imagination. These films aren't just sort of randomly throwing these things out.
Yeah, well, this is something I noticed is that there's a TV series on, which I don't watch much TV, but it caught me that the writing was very good in a series called West Wing. And so I've kind of watched that once in a while, and the issues that come up in that tend to come up, it's almost prophesize what happens in reality. I've seen this on a couple of instances, and it really surprised me, the synchronicity that was involved in that. But really my question was, I would really love to find out if there's some way that this movie that was made in Portugal with Terrence and Anton Wilson and could be made available. I've never been able to track it down.
Yeah, you should try sound photosynthesis.
The name of it again is Evasions LX94.
Yeah, try sound photosynthesis on the web. They might have it. They have a lot of obscure tapes and audio cassettes and so forth, and they're just called sound photosynthesis. They're out here in Mill Valley in California.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks
bye.
for calling. Again, listeners, 4690500. You can become a caller by calling that number. And 866-625-9378. We have 10 minutes left. I wanted to not leave this program today without talking about Sheldrake, seeing as that was the article I saw in Etny Reader that so inspired me to track you down, as it were. And his morphogenetic fields, his phenomenology really around ESP, ghost, soul, the phenomenon of the experiment and the experimenter, anything you want to comment on Sheldrake and bring to the forefront, yes.
Yeah, Sheldrake's central idea is just this idea of the morphogenetic fields, and it was an idea that he didn't originate, but he revived it. It was first proposed back in the 1920s. He revived it, and as a sort of alternative way of accounting for the origins of form, and particularly in embryogenesis, for the mystery of how these embryos unfold from their genes, and the sort of idea is that all the phenotypical characteristics of the embryo are just encoded in the gene, like genetic software, and so everything unfolds in a kind of one-to-one ratio from out of that. But that theory just leaves a lot of things unaccounted for. And Sheldrake came up with this idea of morphogenetic fields, that there is this sort of invisible, non-material, formative field that shapes everything that comes into being. And it does so by transmitting information non-energetically. So you have instantaneous resonance. So it's this idea that like forms resonate with other like forms. For example, a tuning fork will set up a resonance in another tuning fork if it's of the exact size and shape. If it's the exact same form, it'll automatically start another resonance if you start one in the first tuning fork. There's also this problem in physics that's long been known, but nobody's been able to come up with a really convincing explanation, which is this idea of pendulums on mechanical clocks. If you put two clocks, sort of on a wall with the pendulum swinging in discordant ways, gradually the pendulums will slowly synchronize. And this theory of morphic resonance suggests that the reason that they synchronize is because they are in exact form. They're in formal, what he calls morphic resonance.
Okay,
Also,
I'm sorry. We have another caller. I'd just like to take the call.
I'll just go on forever if you will.
Oh, I'd love it. I could listen to you all day. Dan in Prospect.
Hi, thanks. I'm enjoying the program. I wanted to ask your guest, he sounds like he would know something about this. There's a very interesting, I think I could almost refer to it as New Age myth in the, what I'd call the 100 monkey experiment. And this is always used as a point of truth. And I think I read Lynn Margola's book or one of those people. And they went back and they actually found that in the scientific literature, that experiment was not done in the way it was said. And a lot of people who've written about it will actually admit that, and I've actually told people that. And I find that people really want to believe in this, what I'd call the 100th monkey myth. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes, I am.
I would like you to speculate. Is this this desire to really believe that consciousness would be shaped if a critical mass of people believed in something, even if it wasn't directly expressed? Is this something that you resonate to and believe in, and even if there's no scientific evidence to support it, would you say this is sort of a contribution to a New Age myth?
It could be looked at in that way. And the 100th monkey thing was this idea of, the monkeys, what is it, one or two of them learn how to wash a potato or something like that, and then all the other monkeys spontaneously pick it up
and then
other
people,
locations.
Right, and the monkeys
islands
that were geographically separate somehow started to do it even if there was no direct communication, which people love because they, it gives credence to the idea, well, if I change and my friends change, the whole world changes.
Yeah, and so the morphogenetic field idea that Sheldrake came up with was, he didn't originate it to explain the 100th monkey thing, but the 100th monkey thing could be linked in with it, was this idea that what he says is once a population begins to learn something, it becomes easier and easier, let's say within the human population, learning computers. The first generations coming along find them very difficult. It takes them a long time to learn them. But to the offspring that come along, they pick it up quicker and quicker. And there seems to be a way in which characteristics are transmitted, not through the genes, but in a kind of a sort of mysterious, non-local way, almost through a sort of group mind that the species is embedded in. For example, he says, it's long been known that if you teach rats how to run, a certain maze, it'll make it easier for other rats elsewhere to learn how to run the same maze, even though, it's the same basic pattern, but there's been no transmission between the different groups of rats. Supposedly that experiment can be conducted. And the morphogenetic field hypothesis is just another way of bringing into account this idea that it's basically, we use the word instinct. Well, it's something in the mind of the species, they learn how, they transmit through instinct. But when we say that, what are we really saying? We don't know. So the theory is, just accounts for it in terms of morphic resonance. There's a resonance that's invisible, that's transmitted through a field in which we're all embedded. And the field accounts for the way in which the resonance takes place. So, the theory can be broadened to include all kinds of things, like explaining telepathy and, phantom limb phenomena and so forth. But,
Yeah, that's good. What you said sort of gives some kind of credence that maybe even if you can't demonstrate it in the lab, that, there's something that might be going on in a greater field.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks. That's pretty much what I wanted to do, is get your opinion about that.
Yeah, well, thanks for calling in.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks, caller. And you might really enjoy reading that entire Sheldrake interview in this book, Twilight of the Clockwork God. You had made a comment in your interview with Stanislav Grof. You asked, do you think the current visions of I'm really trying to rush this show, of apocalyptic imagery in our contemporary art and culture, including phenomena like Waco and Heaven's Gate and so forth, might indicate that we are undergoing a birth process, that some new phase of culture or mythology is coming into being? How did you get your question answered in a nutshell?
The thing with Grof was that he originated this whole theory of birth trauma, that a lot of the psychological problems that people have, like ways in which they choose to commit suicide, is linked back to unprocessed sort of memory gestalts from the trauma of birth. And a lot of times, when people regress into these states, like he was originally getting them into these states by administering LSD, and then later on he developed holotropic breath work to move them into these states. And a lot of times the visions that they would have would be these apocalyptic images, and he linked these apocalyptic images with the body actually going through the birth canal and sort of being pressured and squeezed and then having to fight and struggle through that. And he sort of linked these visions of the end of the world back to that. And so that was what prompted my question, was it's possible that with all this apocalyptic imagery that's going on in our culture right now, it seems as though a new culture is coming into being. And he did agree with that.
Yeah, and that did seem to be a common thread with who talked about the Ecozoic era. Was it Sheldrake?
Brian Swim.
Brian Swim.
Yeah.
Talking about a same kind of coming into a new era.
Yeah, there's a million different ways
Yes.
of saying we're moving into a new age, and all these different thinkers come up with different labels for it. But I think the fascinating thing is that they're all arriving at similar conclusions independently of each other.
Anything you want to say in closing, John?
No, nothing really, other than that it's been a delight, and thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I always enjoy talking about these guys and talking about what I'm working on now.
Well, you're extremely articulate. I am not today.
Well, thank you.
So delighted to have had you on the show. Utne Reader, for anybody who doesn't know the publication, which is where I originally spied the Sheldrake excerpt, can be found in most progressive bookstores or subscribed to by calling 1-800-736-UTNE, UTNE. Twilight of the Clockwork God can be ordered through the usual channels. Again, the publisher is Council Oak Books. And after speaking with them, Alternative Currents listeners may well appreciate other authors Council Oaks has published. You can call them at 1-800-247-8850 for more information, or to order Ebert's book directly. I know it's certainly available through the usual channels. Or ask your local bookstore, Borders, wherever. I'd like to thank Helen for being the engineer today, and apologize to you for the rushing that we've done around on this show, but so much information to cover, and indeed to go back and read Twilight of the Clockwork God is going to be a must for me in the next week. Again, we've been speaking to John David Ebert. This is Bella Johnson, host of Alternative Currents, and we'll be talking to you again next month, first Friday of the month at 10 a.m. Meanwhile, do take care and happy spring.